I experienced about, wait a minute, we're a family, we're going to go through this together. If you think there's some danger, well, then we're going to go through the danger together. Don't you try to be individualistic and go inside the car. We go through all this as a family. So this is known as the brotherhood mentality. You don't have a good reason for what you're doing, but for the sake of social cohesiveness, harmony, you say, all right. Now, why might you behave in that way? Not the same situation, of course, but in other situations like that? Why would you do that? Who can say, why would you go with the flow, whether you understand it or not? Who can give a reason? Yes?
So other people will like you?
Other people will like you? Anything else?
It's some sort of comfort.
That's a good one. Describe that comfort. What is it?
If everyone's doing it, then you feel like you belong. So you're comfortable. And if you do the opposite, then everyone will see different.
Yes.
So then you just feel like an outsider.
Right. And underneath what you're saying is that everyone wants to be part of something bigger than themselves.
The status quo, not rock the boat.
But go deeper. Go along the status quo and not rock the boat. Why? What does it do for you when you do that?
Well, it just makes me different.
Huh?
It separates.
No, when you go along with that, what does it do for you?
Yeah, there's like a sense of belonging.
Sense of belonging, yes. And also when you do things that everyone else does, whether you know the reason for it or not, it gives you something common to talk about, right? Common things to share. Otherwise, how are you going to have relationships if you don't have anything common to talk about? So better that you go along with the illusion just so you can have a basis for bonding and sharing, right? It's horrible, you might think, to not have anything to share or any basis for relating to others. So that's a powerful pressure on you to just do what everyone else is doing so you won't feel left out and you'll feel that you have some way of connecting to others. You like the same music, you like the same clothes, you go to the same places. It makes you feel that there is something you can share and others can share with you. Have any of you ever felt like you're an alien? You had nothing that you could share with those around you, and they had nothing they could share with you? How many have felt like that? Raise your hand. Goodness, you've all come to the right place. Because this is the alien house. All right, who raised their hand over here? Yes, okay. How did it feel?
Like you're an outsider.
You had nothing to share, is that it? Nothing common.
Yeah.
And so, how did you think to fix the situation?
Not let the fear come in between and just.
Not let what?
Not let fear, not let myself be ruled by fear. And
Fear of what?
fear of standing out, fear of the not belonging.
Oh, so you just said, the heck with it, I'm the way I am, that's the way it is. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else over here? You raise your hand?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've always felt more important that if I'm going to share myself, I'm going to share myself, and not be the self that somebody else thinks I should be or wants me to be.
How did it work out?
Well, because, I mean, I'm accepting of everyone, and hopefully they'll accept me for who I am.
Well,
And not want to change me or want to be somebody else.
were your hopes fulfilled?
And it's like anything else, at times they're dashed, but I would say overall, yeah, they are.
Sometimes you're an alien who walks alone, and sometimes you feel like you have some persons who relate to you and you can relate to them.
Yeah, at times.
Anyone else? Raise your hand. Come on, the other aliens, please raise your hand. I saw you raise your hand.
Been feeling like an alien for a long time.
How many years?
About 32.
32 years. Since what? Since since
well,
your spaceship landed on the planet?
you know, once I was coming out of college and became vegetarian and went into the meditation thing.
What year was that?
77.
Oh, so
Back then.
you were kind of an early bird, huh?
And I searched. But it seemed like the deeper I got into that, the harder it was to fit in with a universal satisfaction. I didn't get the satisfaction I didn't get the peace and the harmony from being around other people.
Didn't you harmonize with them?
Try to, but the thing is different when the smell, the meat, the smell.
Oh, you didn't like barbecue?
The smell, the smell, the meat, and then the other part that comes with that.
What else?
All the sticky stuff. I hate to call it hedonism, but it's semi-hedonism. They're making the human body is no longer natural anymore. And so it affected me too. I'll tell you this, even though I started those many years ago, I backslid.
Oh.
So the effect
Why?
of the alien thing, wanting to be a part, wanting to be accepted, wanting to feel peace, and wanting something in us. We want this, pat on the back.
Approval. Social approval.
See?
Powerful force, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to get it from someone, right?
Yes. And so it started out, that took me through, in 32 years, 2 marriages,
2 marriages.
4 kids.
Only 2?
Right. Took me to India. The persecution started after the India trip.
When was that?
Persecution. When I was 77.
Oh.
The first, yeah, when I went. And we were like, at that time, with the Maharishi and them. So it was different, Satchidananda, Rajneesh, Maharishi. But this here, I guess I'll say it like this, the simplicity. Because the thing is so cosmic, this thing that we're talking about, the Bhagavad Gita, how do you apply it? And so it finally makes sense that the medicine can be applied if it's understood in a simple way. See, we were all meditating. Everybody could be hippies. You can mix the thing. You can smoke herbs.
That was simple, wasn't it?
No. Very complicated because the magic that we wanted from the reason that why we was doing it never came. And if it did, very temporal. You know how. And so it seemed like persecution. So I said,
All right. You were an alien from way back then.
oh yeah.
Anyone else? Who else raised their hand? Yes.
It kind of feels like I'm kind of going in between worlds, like.
How old are you?
26.
26. That's not. You're too young to be an alien.
I'm a baby alien then.
You mean to tell me that you resisted the way of the people in general?
I struggle back and forth.
Okay.
Back and forth, I come here and I feel like I kind of get connected with myself, and then I'm out there.
And what do you connect with out there?
Oh.
Come on, tell us. You're among friends.
You know, the material world, just
Like what? The trees. Butterflies. Tell us.
I wish. Just the mentality. The mentality is so much different. It's, yeah,
But,
it's,
no, but
it's
how,
very,
you connect with the mentality?
No, that's where I'm struggling. It's
Oh.
getting less and less where I, trying to have a little conversation about whatever they talk about, basketball, or did you watch the game, did you see the fight?
Uh-huh.
And I really have no interest in that, so it's having to pretend
Oh.
to care.
So even as a female, you're supposed to get caught up in all that, huh?
That's just an example. I mean, like, I can't really think of anything right now.
Because the guy, it's like the guys talk that. So if you want to be popular with the guys, you have to like know what happens with the games and.
No, I do not actually tell me that.
Oh, really?
But even like talking about, oh, going to the gym, or like, oh, we're gonna go shopping.
Shopping, retail therapy.
That still works. Still works. But
So really, like your friends get together and say, "Let's go shopping."
and it's
Yeah, really. How many of you do that? Raise your hand.
come on, girls.
Let's go shopping. I guess the mall owners really love you guys, huh? So, still, what really do you think you're connecting with when you say when you're here, you're one way, when you go out there, you're another way. So when you're out there, what are you really connecting with?
And just being like the general, just everybody. You just want to, like everybody's saying, you just want to be part of the group. You don't want to like stand out. You just want to.
So is it a particular group, or does your group change, or
People just
people that you've known?
Every day, just day to day, people that you see when you're driving and they're next to you and they're doing whatever they're doing. It's just easier to not,
To not think and just
just
go along with what they're doing.
I was actually, it's funny because I was actually, when I was on my way here, I was driving, I always look at people and I was thinking that thought that it's so easy to just kind of, forget about anything spiritual and just kind of live your day. Pretty mundane, like,
Yeah, you just turn your brain off. You focus on money, decorating and pleasing your body, getting fame and prestige,
Yeah.
getting the comforts.
Stresses that come with it too.
Yes, the mind is so tortured and the heart is so burnt crisp from playing the game. But everyone's playing the game, so you feel like, why should you resist, right? You ever see that bumper sticker on cars? Nice girls finish last. You ever seen that one?
I have actually. It's the one about trucks, but I don't remember that one.
So what are you going to do? You're like, as you say, caught in between. You're caught in between, on the one hand, becoming aware of the spiritual necessity for your spiritual development. And then on the other hand, you feel the pressure of just living in forgetfulness.
I think it's the constant awareness that at times I think because I am, and I feel like it sometimes gets really overwhelming. That I'm constantly aware of so many things. I'm like, sometimes I feel I'm like, when I work, when I do house sitting, I turn on the TV and I just zone out because I'm like, my brain just hurts so much from just thinking about so many different things.
Like what?
Just my life and what.
All 26 years.
Yeah. And my future and where I'd like to be in my spiritual life and how to get there.
Well, at moments like that, instead of clicking on the TV and zoning out, did you ever think maybe I'll just chant Hare Krishna or read Bhagavad Gita? You go into a different zone.
That's the part where it's so overwhelming.
Why?
Because there's so many thoughts that are already like in my mind or I already have that way. Oh, I chant though. Chanting actually does help a lot. It's helped me
Me too. Yes, yes. You'll find that the more you get into the chanting as a yoga practice, as something even more essential than the air you breathe and the water you drink, then your life is really into something.
Sounds so
It is, but we make life unnecessarily complicated. We're experts at making our life unnecessarily complicated.
Why is it that it's so hard to just be settled and content or being like at ease? It's almost a disturbing, I think.
Because of the shadow self. We've let the shadow self dominate our life. We don't know how to reach the higher self, and so the shadow has covered everything. Back in the 40s and 50s especially, when there was no TV, or else TV was very primitive. There was the most popular radio show was like a serial about a character called the Shadow. Yes, all you. Yes. And you remember that?
Dark Shadow.
No, not Dark Shadow.
Not
It's a Shadow.
The
Shadow knows.
You're right. Who knows what evil lurks within the hearts of men?
He's way back.
The Shadow knows. That's all you heard it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father used to listen to it.
Yeah, right. So, this is what we're dealing with, the shadow self, which has become so prominent. And that shadow self just wants to live in illusion. Just let the senses and the mind go wild, and the shadow self will tell you. Your shadow self will tell you, you're going to be happy like this, you're going to get relief like this. Just let your senses go wild, be hedonistic, if only for a weekend. Just get into being the body. Take some intoxication for your mind, and you'll forget all of your anxieties, you'll forget all of your big questions, and you'll be normal. Live for the moment. This is the shadow self. It's conditioned. It's like an automatic pilot that we've developed over the years. And we basically crucify ourselves, surrendering to this shadow self. It's like our friend was telling us when he went to India in '77 with various groups. He mentioned one group had the philosophy that in order to reach the higher self, you have to burn out the lower self. So the more so the path of self-realization is that you just totally indulge in the lower self, and then automatically you rise up to the higher self. What do you think?
It didn't work.
If that is the case, then animals would be the most self-realized and enlightened. In other words, if you just act in a bestial way, an animal way, you're certainly going to remain an animal. But Bhakti Yoga involves purifying the lower self so that you can have awareness of the higher self. And only by becoming aware of the higher self can you be aware of higher pleasure. So basically what we have to decide is, do we want to focus our life on cheap thrills, cheap stuff, or do we want the most expensive jewels of spiritual attainment? This is what we have to decide. There's so many broken pieces of glass and plastic that apparently are glittering in the sun, beckoning to us. So think of it in that way. All around is just broken pieces of plastic and glass, and we're thinking it's so bad. I should also have pieces of broken plastic and glass. There must be some value because everyone is going for that. So Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that only when we learn how to purify the lower self can we actually have a chance for being peaceful. We'll never be peaceful by trying to fulfill our material desires. It's never happened. You see, what's going on is simply the promise that you'll be peaceful and satisfied. If you can see this clearly, you save yourself so much trouble. Krishna has an illusory energy, a mirage, that's always promising you and never delivering. An example I like to give is, it's like you order something on the internet, and you pay for it on the internet, and then what you ordered never comes. It's a frustrated feeling. So that is what Krishna's energy of illusion, known as Maya, is like. All you get is the promise. The goods are never delivered. But because everyone is accepting the promise, you think it's normal. Let's just all believe in the promise, and let's not look and see if the goods are delivered. Who's inspiring you? Who is encouraging you to look at whether the goods are delivered? How many of you had parents who sat you down when you were young and said, okay, now let's look at material existence. Is it really all that it seems to be? Is it really delivering? What are the deliverables? Have they come to your doorstep? How many of you had parents who did that? Did you listen to them? Right. Okay. So, how many of you had school teachers who would say, let's analyze material existence and see, is it for real? Is it actually satisfying anyone? How many of you had pastors at church or rabbis or imams or whatever who said, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's look at material life and see, does it really deliver the goods? So this is the problem. Any governors of California, presidents of the USA who say like that? No, everyone is encouraging, just be in the dream world. Hey, you're too young to think about these kind of things. Wait until you're in your 70s. Huh?
I thought about that one.
Yeah. After all, if there is a God, didn't He give us these bodies to enjoy? Well, actually, from the Bhakti Yogi point of view, from the Krishna conscious point of view, even if you want to assume that God gave us these bodies to enjoy, the question would then be, well, why aren't you enjoying? In other words, chasing broken pieces of plastic and glass, you call that enjoyment? Real enjoyment is known to the person who can control his or her senses and mind. That's the entry qualification for happiness. To be able to control your own mind and senses. Now, how many of you, when you applied for a job or to the university, were asked that question? Can you control your mind and senses? No one cares about that. When you were meeting someone and considering developing a friendship or relationship with that person, did the person ask you, oh, by the way, I'd just like to know, can you control your mind and senses? Anyone ever ask you that? Did you ask anyone that?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
So You were considering a potential significant other?
No.
Ah.
No, just a person I knew. I was telling them, oh, you need to control your mind and senses. You know, because to awaken the Kundalini energy or to feel energy, to see energy around trees, you need to, if you can't control your mind and senses, you won't be able to feel the energy.
I see.
And so I was trying to help him out and say, hey, you know, there's something more than just.
So what did he say? Like, wow, I really want to see the
No.
energy around trees?
No. Pretty much, well, I detached my relationships with those people because they were not interested in finding out who you really are. And
Were they sad because of that?
They wouldn't tell me.
They probably thought this guy's a bit strange.
Yeah, they thought it was crazy because I like to look directly at the sun. And I'm like, oh, this guy's a crazy one, you know?
At that point, you know.
But when you look at it, you feel peaceful. You start to
Okay. Alright. So, getting back to the point of uncontrolled minds and senses before we started staring at trees at the sun. It takes all types to come here, please. You know, we relish the diversity, although we don't recommend staring at trees in the sun. This important question for us is, how can we actually taste real pleasure through uncontrolled mind and senses? Or looked at the other way, can controlling the mind and senses actually generate significant pleasure? When you think of pleasure, you think of just doing what you like with your mind and senses without any inhibition. You can just have what you want, where you want it, how you want it. Maybe you think of yourself on a vacation to Hawaii and you're getting breakfast served in bed. Is that the ultimate breakfast in bed? Wake up at 12 noon and have a brunch. Just pick up the phone, call room service, and have breakfast in bed. Isn't that the ultimate attainment? And you're there with a TV remote in your hand, and you can just, while having breakfast in bed, you can just watch TV and. What do you think? Huh? So, what do we consider real pleasure to be? Let's look at that question. Anyone? What do you consider real pleasure to be? Yes?
Lately, my spiritual connection with Krishna.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, but okay. Before you came to that experience, what would you think real pleasure was?
Money so that I could exhale.
Money so you could exhale.
Just money and security so that I could. That seems to be a real pleasure. To be generous with friends.
To have enough, so you saw pleasure in getting money to give you security. So the real pleasure was security.
Security, material security, but also there have been times in life where I've been able to be materially generous with friends.
Security for me, and then I can help others to be secure.
Yes.
And make this world a lasting, permanent place, right?
It didn't work out that great.
Why not? You had the money, right?
There have been times when I've worked extra hard and made extra money.
Right.
Never handed.
Did you get extra security?
I know, I got more. It brought a lot of. It actually brought more heartache.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
It was based on false stuff.
So, previous to your coming in contact with Bhagavad Gita, you considered pleasure to be security, making this world a secure, safe place for you and the pursuit of your options, as well as for those who are near and dear to you.
Yes.
So you were trying to like some kind of UN or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to play God a little bit.
All right.
I loved when people needed me like that.
Anyone else? What do you think is real pleasure? That you're talking to them?
No, I think now it'd be how to be less anxious.
Less anxious.
Yeah. Anytime I have a problem or something, my mind would just kind of start with
But
one
that's,
part of the story.
but that sounds negative. My real pleasure is being less anxious. Can you say it as a positive?
Living with less anxiety.
Ah,
No
still
anxiety.
negative. Come on. Living with less anxieties.
But,
No. Let her finish. We'll get to it. Don't worry.
How to make it sound like
Huh?
no, instead of living with peace.
Living with peace.
Doesn't sound like me. I'm just following what he said. I mean, for me personally, I've been just always, if I had some kind of problem, I just managed to create it into a bigger storm. And since chanting for me has helped me not take one story and drag it out to be this whole other scenario that's probably never going to happen. Or so it has. For me, my personal pleasure would be to not be so mental and be less anxious. I know to me it sounds
No,
like
actually, I think I understand what she's doing now. You see, at the beginning stages of your bhakti journey, much of what you consider the advantage is about getting relief from material distress.
yeah.
And so I can understand that. It's like, here's an example I often give. It's like you've been banging your head against the wall all your life and thinking that that's pleasurable.
Yeah.
Smash your head against the wall, smash it. What's this warm stuff that's running out of my head? Keep smashing your head against the wall. Finally, you realize that you're just hurting yourself and you stop. So what's the first thing you're going to feel when you stop? You're going to feel relief.
Relief.
Yeah, I'm not banging my head against the wall anymore. Relief. And for a while you just bask in those feelings of not banging your head against the wall. I'm not doing it anymore. Wow. I don't feel that pain anymore. I feel less anxiety. I feel less headaches.
That's exactly how it feels.
Yes, but you haven't yet made enough spiritual progress in bhakti to understand the positive. And of course there is the positive. Krishna is the supreme positive. But first, we're elated to escape material distress. It's like if you were living in a house and it caught on fire and you managed to get outside of the house before it burned down. You would just be overwhelmed with feelings of having escaped a Holocaust. Then, as your day progressed, you would start to think about where you're going to live next and how you're going to feel in your next house. But at first you're just overwhelmed by the fact, I escaped a disaster. Ah, what a relief. But you can't stay in that stage forever. Just like I always give the example, I think some of you have heard it. The term nirvana. How many of you have heard the term nirvana? Yes. How many know what it means? The actual exact meaning of the Sanskrit term nirvana is vana means forest and nir means out of. It means you're out of the forest of illusion. And certainly it's a great achievement to get out of, to escape a forest of illusion, nirvana. still, the question has to be asked. Now that you're out of the forest of illusion, where are you and what are you going to do? If you don't know that, you chances are high you're just going to run right back into the forest of illusion. You don't know what else to do. Once you get over your feelings of relief, now in the forest of illusion, it was a nightmare. Total hallucination. It was crazy. How long can you go on like that? Less anxiety. Less stress. Less. Not as much. No more this, no more that. How long can you go on like that? You can just imagine meeting the person of your dreams, and you're and you're talking to that person, and you're trying to express your joy at the budding relationship. You know, you're not a thief. You're not a liar. You're not ugly. You're not dirty. You're not insensitive. You're not inconsiderate. You're not. Try it. How enlivening would that be? At first, the person, no doubt, wanting to be sensitive, would understand you've been through a few traumas, and would appreciate that you're not lumping that person in with your traumas. But after a while, the person would get tired of it. And be like, can you just, appreciate me for what I am instead of what I'm not? So the stage of coming to spiritual life, because we're materially exhausted, that stage definitely exists. I've had it on material life. I'm fried on material life. I'm burnt out. Been there, done that. I often tell, especially persons around the age of 20, 21, 22, 23, I tell them, just face it. You've already done everything that there is to do in material life. You did it as a teenager. The intoxication, the lust affairs. What else is left in life? There's not anything else left to do except those same things in different places. As a teenager, you might have been, executed in the back of a car, and when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have more money, supposedly, a hotel, but, it's all the same thing. What does material life have to offer you except intoxication and lust? And in the process of pursuing those things, you want a bit of prestige and respectability for yourself and some fame. So I tell persons who are 20, 21, 22, 23, you've done it all. There's nothing more really to look forward to. That's why, I don't know if I explained here, what life was like in the 50s. Did I explain that here? Parents, in the 50s, parents would tell their kids, this is before the 60s hit and everything went wild. In the 50s, everything was conservative, and the parents would tell the kids, look, before you, get into intimacy, you should get married. And so, that's the way it was. Of course, people back then in the 50s, they married when they were 18, 19, 20, 21, because that was the only respectable way that you could indulge in some intimacy. Otherwise, everyone would look down on you. And what reason did the parents give back in the 50s? It'll be better if you wait. Such indulgences are nice, but they're meant for later. So what happened when the 60s came along? Yeah, what was the basis of that?
Everybody broke out. Got wild.
In other words, the young people said, well, if it's true what the parents say, that these bodily affairs are the best thing in life, why should we wait? So they just, broke the wall down. If this is the true nectar, the true pleasure of life, then well, why should we wait? So everything went wild from that point on. In other words, the parents weren't able to explain that, actually we're not the body, we're not material, and therefore material pleasure is not our natural activity. We are spirit soul, part of the Supreme Soul. We're part of Krishna, and we're meant to use our senses for spiritual purposes. The parents couldn't say that. The parents would just say, look, just hold off until you're married. Good things come to those who wait. And in the 60s, what did the kids say to that? Yeah, right. If it's so good, why should we wait? Because no one had an understanding of what is the bodily conception of life, thinking I am this body and mind, therefore naturally I want to please the body and mind. No one had any understanding of our spiritual identity and how to act as spirit soul. No one had that understanding. So that you don't have a basis for genuine spiritual development as long as you cannot present a clear distinction between material pleasure and spiritual pleasure. So what happened? Religion became for people a means to get material happiness and pleasure by praying to God. And that's all. One famous evangelist, he was the most famous evangelist in the USA in the 20th century. He would give talks to sports stadiums, baseball stadiums full of people. And a news reporter asked him, what are you going to do when you get to heaven? And he said, when I get to heaven, I want to drive around in a yellow Cadillac. So I can sympathize with that statement, because if you have no knowledge of the spirituality and your spiritual identity, you can't think of what is spiritual pleasure. So I guess, what could the spiritual world be like? It must be doing all the things I like to do now, and there'll be no end. What basketball games without end, shopping at the mall without end, driving a yellow Cadillac and never having to refuel. It's natural you're going to think in those material terms because you lack knowledge of the spirituality and your spiritual identity, and therefore you don't know what is spiritual pleasure. So the enormous job that Krishna is doing in Bhagavad Gita is to introduce us to the world of spiritual pleasure, so that we'll slacken our grip on artificial material pleasure. This is a big job. You see, as long as we don't know anything better, we're going to hold on to what we got, right? Who here wants to live without pleasure? No way. Oh, you do? You raise your hand, you want to live without pleasure?
No, I thought you said live in my pleasure.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right. So what is your pleasure that you're living in?
I didn't think you were going to see me. Tell us about living. Please tell us about living in your pleasure. Shopping, playing tennis. No, actually, well, it would be a smurge of spirituality and physical pleasure, and I was...
Oh,
it would be
a combo.
combination, yeah. Understanding spirit and giving it to others and healing others and doing...
Understanding the body and giving it to others.
No, it's not separate. I'm not using it in sexual terminology. I'm using it in having a oneness with all humans.
How do you do that?
Well, it's not common on this planet.
No, but how do you do it?
How do I do it?
Yeah. You walk out on the street and say, oneness. You embrace everyone you see. Oneness.
Sometimes, yes.
You embrace everyone you see.
I do. actually.
How many people do you see?
Well, I see the people, you know, I try to embrace them with my spirit, and that doesn't mean all the time you're gonna touch them with your hands. Touching them with your soul is how, like looking them in the eye and giving them a contact and touching them in their soul and doing it in a positive way and giving them positivity. Am I crazy?
Okay, I appreciate the good intentions, certainly, we all appreciate such good intentions. But are we really knowing what we're doing? That would be the question. To touch someone's soul, I mean, it's poetic, but how does it actually work, you know? You like stick your finger inside and touch their soul, or what do you do?
No, just like in a Palladius sort of fashion.
In a what?
In a Palladius sort of fashion. You connect with their spirit through your eyes, and
Are you sure that you're connecting to the spirit, though?
you're connecting to something. I mean,
Oh, okay, I agree
it's
with
not
that, I
their
agree with
spirit,
that.
but when you look at somebody's eyeballs, you're connecting with their
The retina, yeah.
their person.
Yeah.
Boy, I wish I hadn't said that.
Yeah, you're helping the discussion, you're aiding the spiritual progress of many others here.
Right. Well, what I'm hearing from you is like, you know, just sexual pleasure and then spiritual pleasure, but I mean, isn't there a smudge somewhere in between? Can you experience, you know, with oneness with your mate, with your partner in a very spiritual aspect?
I think that sometimes when we hear talk about how we're not the body and bodily indulgence, we automatically think that one thing is being talked about, but actually there's a whole range of activities based on thinking of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, what is that orgasmic release then? I mean, we always feel so relaxed, most of us anyway, after you have, you know.
I don't know much about that, to tell you the truth. But what I do know is if you're not the body, then any attempt to enjoy what you are not will eventually lead to frustration. It's like if I thought I'm this cloth around my shoulders. This is me. Yes. And I can even throw this piece of cloth on the floor and then get someone else's cloth and throw it on top of it. Okay. Relate to one another. So, you would say, this is crazy because you're not the cloth, and the other person is not the cloth. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have to discriminate between the exterior and the interior. So, the yoga texts get to the root of the problem. It's not just about physicality as ordinarily known. It's about thinking that we are something we're not. And that covers the whole range of material pursuits, whether shopping or this or that. Why try to squeeze pleasure out of a body and mind that you're not? Now you might say, well, isn't there a way that you could kind of, go halfway and squeeze some pleasure out of your cloth thinking it's you? Huh? What do you say? Maybe there's a halfway point. So I could say, this cloth is halfway me. Would you go for that?
Do you really want my opinion?
Sure.
Okay. Our bodies are feeling and thinking and breathing and constantly living and dying at the same time. A piece of cloth isn't really a good analogy.
Why? It's covering me?
Right, but it doesn't talk, and it won't talk back.
Well, does your body actually talk?
Yes, it does.
Or is it the soul, the spirit you that's using the body as a machine?
Well, yes, okay, yes, but you know what? Having a physical ailment and not knowing what the physical ailment is yet, your body is going to tell you, I have a physical ailment, you need to take care of this.
Just like your car, when you don't put oil in it, the light goes off. Oil.
Right.
Okay, but the car is a machine, and it tells you things.
Wow.
Your computer is a machine. It tells you things.
Right.
Time for an update of your software. But similarly, the body is also a machine. So you're raising very helpful points, and you're clearing the way for others' understanding. So you're doing a great service. What we're dealing with now are very essential issues for our life. How am I going to get pleasure? How am I going to enjoy? You have to understand clearly and distinctly what you are. Otherwise, you could waste the whole lifetime or more. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about being in illusion, not simply in one life, but life after life. Just think about that. Birth after birth, life after life. We're lost in a mirage, in the matrix of illusion. So we won't have the incentive to come out of illusion until we see something better. You've got to find something better to do than shopping. Otherwise, you're going to keep shopping. As long as you can get some kind of buzz by the retail therapy, by shopping, you're going to do it. But then when you find out there's something better, out of pure self-interest, you're going to drop the inferior.
Well, does it help that it's art supplies so that I can do my art? I mean, it supports something good.
I'm just speaking generally.
No one-
We like to present this point here because it's so crucial. Krishna's psychology of self-interest, explains in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. You cannot restrain yourself from trying to get pleasure. You'll go for it every time. Even when you sacrifice, it seems, your pleasure for someone else's pleasure, you're getting pleasure from that activity that I'm letting you enjoy. You'll keep on doing that until you can taste a superior spiritual pleasure. At that point, you'll relinquish your grip on the lower material pleasure. This is what yoga is really about. And this is what we aim for here at the Bhakti House. How to gradually introduce people to the higher pleasures so that they'll give up their tight grip on the lower inferior pleasures. Isn't that a noble cause? Because unless you taste something better, you're not going to give up the lower, no matter what you tell yourself. Theoretically, or religious beliefs, or this, or that, or the other, you're not going to do it. Example I like to give, let's say you're driving a jalopy, and I really start making fun of you. What are you driving such a junky car for? What's about the oldest car you see on the road these days? What, 1969 or something, or yeah?
1962.
Yeah, you see 62 on the road?
Yeah, low riders.
Huh?
Low riders in Riverside, 62s and 64.
Are they junk or are they preserving them?
Ooh, pretty,
Complete junk.
pretty.
Alright.
But it's
So-
really junk.
Okay. And so let's say you were driving one of those cars, and I just laugh. I want a piece of junk. What are you driving this car for? You might get offended, probably. That, look, this is all I have. Or this is what I need to get to work and go to where I need to go. Why are you making fun of me? This is the best I can do. You'd be defensive. You'd be offended. You might even admit sometimes, yeah, I know my car is a piece of junk, but look, it's all I have. So, now, let us say, instead of criticizing you and trying to get you to get rid of that junk car, hey, do me a favor, do us all a favor, get that car off the road, take it to the junkyard, you know, get your $100 for its scrap metal. You won't do it. No. I think it's gonna run for another year. Right? You won't let go. You won't give it up. Okay, suppose I adopt another approach. I drive up to your house or apartment and I'm in a brand new BMW and I walk up to your door and say, here are the keys, it's yours. All you have to do is get rid of your jalopy. What would you say?
Goodbye, jalopy.
You'd say, what jalopy? I never had a jalopy. And as soon as you sat down in the BMW, you'd say, wow, what a difference. That's a material example. Just to show you that you're going to cling tight to your imaginary material pleasures until you get something better. Krishna knows that. So the goal of our efforts is to indeed get that better experience. And automatically we're let go of the material dream. You gotta have a dream, you gotta have something to motivate you. Whereas of course the dream that Krishna presents in Bhagavad Gita is actually real. It's not an empty dream. There's nothing as bad as an empty dream. Krishna is offering reality. So even if you think it's a dream, you'll find out that it comes to be true. You might be thinking you're dreaming right now that you could be a genuine yogi, a transcendentalist above the material nature. Oh, what a dream, but I'll never be able to do it. You could. Think what it's like. Think what it could be like for you to be a transcendentalist, a mature bhakti yogi, free from the influences of matter, master of your mind and senses. What do you think? That's the way it is. You'll only slacken your grip on illusion when you get a superior taste of the spiritual reality. So please remember that. You'll end the so-called party of uncontrolled mind and senses. You'll turn the light on, the shadow self, so the shadow goes away, only when you get the superior spiritual experience of connecting your senses to Krishna, the master of the senses. All right, how are we doing for time?
Do you have a few questions?
Might there be any questions? Yeah.
When you mention nirvana, does it mean Brahma Yogi?
Nirvana is just what I said. You come out of the forest of illusion, but what is your positive acquisition?
Because from Brahma Yogi, there is no way going there. Always come back from Brahma Yogi.
Unless you make further progress from nirvana or the Brahma Jyoti, you'll go back into illusion. You're concerned about that?
I'm not concerned. I was thinking must be the same thing, nirvana and Brahma Yogi.
Technical point, there's a difference. The important point is that once you stop banging your head against the wall, you gotta know what to do with it next. For a while, you're gonna just be feeling relief. Oh, wow, no more headaches, no more blood splattered here. What a relief. How long can you go on like that, though? You ever, on a very hot summer day, you come into an air-conditioned room, and it's like, but how long can you do like that?
So what do you recommend we meditate on? Let's move on to the next step.
Yes, let's move through that. nice and welcome phase of material relief, let's move to positive attachment to the supreme source of all pleasure. Connect with that supreme source of all pleasure. Connect with Krishna, the supreme positive. Because you can't sustain your spiritual endeavors on negativity. Oh, I'm so glad you're not a bum. I'm so glad you're not greedy. I'm so glad. Who would want to hear that from you constantly? We're trying to establish a culture here, a wisdom culture, of persons who are dedicated to acquiring wisdom and living based on wisdom. It may seem like an impossible task, but there are persons who want to do that. Anything else?
Could you talk a little bit about Dharma? Because I always saw the Bhagavad Gita as being a lot about Dharma.
Yes, Dharma can be analyzed on different levels. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about Dharma in two different ways. One way refers to what's the best course of activity in this world for pursuing material objectives. Just like Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. His occupational dharma was as a warrior. He was meant to stand up for justice and protect the innocent because he had that material propensity. But simultaneously in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about the deepest definition of dharma, which is you are spirit soul. You're meant to always be in harmony with the Supreme Soul. That is your dharma. So at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharma prityaja, mamekam sharanam vraja. Just abandon all your ideas of what dharma is and accept the real dharma, which is you accept my plans. You accept my vision, because you're my heart. So that is the deepest meaning of dharma, that you are eternally part of the Supreme. You're eternally part of Krishna, and you're meant to harmonize with Krishna in pure love. There are subordinate dharmas for how to live in this world according to your material propensities. That's clearly subordinate. So that's why, I take it you read Bhagavad Gita, yes? That's why sometimes Krishna urges Arjuna, knowing your nature as a kshatriya, as a warrior, you cannot run away from this battle. So, throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking on two levels, the material and the spiritual, because both come from him. He says in the 10th chapter, I am the origin of everything material and spiritual. Everything emanates from me. So Krishna is expert not only in the spiritual energy, but also the material energy, because it comes from him. Got it? Very nice question. I'm glad you're reading Bhagavad Gita. Anything else?
I had a slight comment to the overall question about, friends and life and, the spiritual aspect of like trying to balance them or, weed out friends and have that weird time where we're breaking up because I'm going this way and you're going that way. One thing that gave me comfort through the Gita was like the stronger I walked my path was those things just kind of naturally faded away. And I didn't have to worry about it so much. Like at the time it was worrisome, but then I, continued walking it, and the stronger you get in that place, those things kind of naturally just drop off, the things that aren't.
Just as Krishna says, when you get the superior pleasure, the lower so-called pleasures just kind of slide off you.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about positive acquisitions. But then you do have to protect your positive acquisition and make sure no negative influences suddenly jump you. So spiritual life does involve positive and negative. but it is the positive that's most important. So I'm glad that you're having those realizations. Birds of a feather flock together. So when certain birds see that you are no longer flying their way, then we need a support group for aspiring bhakti yogis. We need each other. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're one person against the whole universe trying to do an impossible job. It's like you could feel here you are, a 26-year-old girl, you know, there's a big world out there, you know, and you're going to just go against it all yourself. Seems impossible, doesn't it? You have to go to work or school, and there's family and relatives and friends. And, how is what you read in Bhagavad Gita going to relate to all that? You wonder about that sometimes? Yeah. How does it relate to retail therapy and shopping? And how does it relate to, you know, parties and all that? In other words, what are you going to do? Just be spiritual and float through the air? You ever think about that? What am I going to do? How does a spiritual person fill their days and nights? So here you can come and discover the wisdom culture of bhakti, pure love and devotion for Krishna. And you can get a taste of that. And your whole life can be transformed, without a doubt. So here we need each other as we climb out of illusion together and make progress back to Krishna. All right, I thank you all very much.